Today I'm gonna give it to you straight, but just a disclaimer, if you have a bad attention span and need crazy edits and animations just to keep your attention, then this video and this channel is probably not for you. Right now, my wife and I have been very blessed with a strong combined income, but we still choose to rent an apartment under 2K. We still drive used cars with over 160,000 miles on them, and I still use the iPhone XS even though it's 2025. These frugal habits really stemmed from my Asian American childhood, but I didn't realize the impact it would have until later in life. So in this video, I'm gonna shorten your learning curve when it comes to learning about finances, especially if you're someone that didn't really grow up talking about money. Because it takes a long time to learn this stuff, and from age 10 until now, I can recall 4 mind-blowing principles that I'll reveal throughout this video. And let's just say, frugality and minimalism is super important, but it's not enough to actually build wealth. Chapter 1. I thought we were broke. Like buying a pair of jeans couldn't go over $20, buying shoes couldn't go over $30, so we always bought the knockoffs from Ross. And my family and I never had anything that was up to date. Like my dad literally drove a 1997 Toyota Celica for decades, and I got my first slide phone while kids in my grade were already getting the iPhone 5. I also remember when my dad finally got us a PS2, like the PS3 was already out for 3 years. But if I'm looking back now, I was chilling, you know? I would just go to a friend's house, they would have the newest consoles, I would play with their Nerf guns and other toys that were out that year. But unfortunately, it wasn't until later in my life, like middle school, high school, when I started seeing those friends who I thought were richer than us started to lose everything. I started witnessing divorces that stemmed from financial issues. I started seeing foreclosures. I started seeing bankruptcies. I just saw my friends really stressing out over things that I didn't really worry about. And by the time I was in high school, I realized that my parents really just created this artificial scarcity growing up. And starting off, it definitely wasn't artificial. Like they were scrappy immigrants from the Philippines coming to America. We grew up like washing our red Solo cups, really just trying to make the most out of every dollar. But there was a point where I realized we didn't have to be living like this. They were being super frugal, not just because they were Asian immigrants, but they were also influenced by a radio show that they were listening to called The Ramsey Show. And little did I know, all this saving was intentional. They were trying to pay off debts, and eventually, and more surprisingly, they were trying to pay off our house early. Like I know my dad was even getting roasted at work for driving his 1997 Toyota Celica. But low-key, little did they know, this man was building up his net worth into the millions by just choosing to save and not putting his money towards depreciable assets. But the principle of artificial scarcity really stuck. And it wasn't like we were just totally deprived as kids. Like although we didn't have the material things that all my friends would have, we still got to go on great trips. I think that's where my parents chose to splurge. Like we'd go out to the Philippines for a month, of course, back to the motherland, and we'd go out on road trips, you know, across the country to explore some of the national parks. Chapter 2. I'm just super grateful. I'm super blessed to be in a first-generation American household where my parents actually took the time to learn the American system, because I know a lot of immigrants who don't end up really learning how to thrive here in the States. And looking back, I know I can contribute this to the fact that they went out and they went to find answers themselves, they talked to people, and they asked questions, which leads to my second principle of opening your mouth. All right, gaining knowledge about budgeting, investing, real estate, taxes, isn't just gonna come your way. It has to be an active pursuit. And this is why the title of this video says real talk, because you literally need to be humble enough to admit to people that you don't know something. And you have to be willing to open your mouth and ask a simple question like, what does an IRA stand for? And when you say equity, what does equity even mean? Chances are there are people who are part of these financial conversations that have the exact same question that you have, but they're just not willing to open their mouth because they think they'll look dumb. I remember back when I was a missionary for my church, I would talk to all kinds of people. And of course, our goal was to talk about faith, not finances. But I remember when trying to find common ground with people, I would never admit when I didn't know something. I would always just try to play it off cool and act like I knew what they were talking about when they would speak on cars or sports or religion. I would just smile and nod, you know? I know you guys do it too. I would laugh at things that I didn't actually understand, and honestly, it's pretty cringy looking back on it now. But eventually, I did grow a spine, and I would begin engaging the conversation if something didn't make sense to me. I would just be willing to stop them and say, hey, wait, what was that? Or what are you working on your car? Like, instead of just trying to act like I know what a carburetor is. And surprise, surprise, no one actually got annoyed at me for asking a simple question to clarify or define something. In fact, people are more engaged in a conversation because you're actually asking questions about something that they're interested in and that they have expertise in. So I say all this because you need to be willing to do the same thing when it comes to finances. So next time you hear a term come up that you just don't understand at all, like arbitrage, just stop the person that's talking and ask, what is arbitrage? And I promise you, you won't get a bad reaction. And if someone does end up rolling their eyes or making you feel bad for asking a simple question, then now you know they're probably not a good source of information anyways. Chapter 3. You know how I told you how my dad would just drive his 1997 Toyota Celica for decades? I realized that that was actually a common trait amongst millionaires. Apparently 61% of wealthy people actually drive Hondas and Toyotas and Fords, just like the rest of us. And this is both a really good thing and kind of a bad thing. It's good because now you know your vehicle could very well be the vehicle to your wealth. Like, you know how many people lose $500 to $700 a month to a car payment when they could be investing that money into retirement accounts? But also it is a bad thing because that means people have the wrong impression for what wealth really looks like. Principle number 3, wealth is hidden. It's so easy for uneducated people to get the wrong sense of what wealth looks like. They'll just see a nice car or a luxury watch and think, wow, that person must be wealthy. But that's not a good thing to equate wealth to that. You know, living a life with nice cars, luxury goods, and a mansion. Those are all just stuff that you can see. So it's really easy to try and learn from those people who are visually looking rich. That's why personally, I'm pretty weary and sketched out by people who flex on Instagram, especially young people who are next to their cars, jewelry, and all their flashy things. It makes me think, are you really wealthy? Or are you just using your little wealth now to buy stuff that the world can see? Because once you convert your financial assets into depreciating stuff, you basically just lost your wealthy status. Real wealth, I believe, are the financial assets that you haven't yet converted into stuff. Chapter 4. Let's look at what real wealth looks like. If you have an emergency fund that covers 6 months of your living expenses, I wouldn't be able to tell on the outside. But you would know you have real wealth because you have a pile of money that can cover you if you lose your job, if you decide to change jobs, or if you decide to just take some time off to take care of your family. You have choices. Or if you just have tens of millions of dollars sitting in your investment accounts, I wouldn't be able to tell from the outside. But you yourself would know you have real wealth because you could decide to retire anytime you want, you could decide to treat your parents to a luxury vacation, and you could decide to buy real estate if you wanted to. You have more choices. And honestly, I believe the best measure of wealth is having a strong sense of being able to control your own life, meaning more choices equals more wealth. And honestly, I believe that's also the best measure for happiness while we're on this earth. Having control over my own life, you know, according to God's will, is honestly more important to me than a big salary. It's more important to me than getting a huge mansion, and it's more important to me than owning a luxury car. Because people who don't have much wealth to begin with, who start buying these expensive cars and a big house with a huge mortgage, they end up with having the most payments they need to keep up with. And in the end, they end up robbing themselves of their own freedom that they work so hard to get. So ultimately, wealth isn't about what you can show, it's honestly about what you can do. It's about your choices, your freedom, and your peace of mind that comes with financial security. So if you really want to start building real wealth, the next step is knowing how to make your money work for you. So check out this video where I break down exactly how you should optimally invest your money if you're starting from scratch. Give it a click and I'll see you guys over there.